I like the goofy intro.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back. Harmless Dave here talking about real music in real time for real people just like you and just like me. Super special guest today. This keeps happening. These people keep showing up on my show. Please welcome the wonderful, fantastic, amazing Tommy DeCarlo, singer for the band Boston, also lead vocalist for the band DeCarlo, which one of my favorite albums of this entire year. We're going to talk about the DeCarlo album. Tommy, how are you?
Dave, I'm good. Good to see you. How you been?
I'm indoors a lot, I'm trying to still get a lot of vitamin D, taking a lot of supplements, just trying to follow those CDC guidelines, brother. That's what I'm doing.
I know it's been a rough one, but I know.
You guys are probably a little grounded these days. I know you got a couple of gigs going on. What's the story with that?
Yeah, well, since the COVID thing, it's been pretty challenging.
Yeah.
I mean, I think every live band has had a lot of struggles with that, and
Yeah.
but we've had a few shows. We've had some private events, and of course, the venues that we played at, they were COVID friendly. They social distancing and all that. So it was a little different, but up on stage, it was the same. It was really fun to get out and play again. And
Yeah.
And especially, it was really special for the fans because I could only imagine, like us, being so cooped up. You could tell they were just dying to get outside and enjoy themselves a little. So that was fun, and we have a few more on the books. They're starting to come in a little bit more and more, but you really never know what tomorrow will bring with the COVID issue. So we're just kind of waiting and watching, and we'll see what unfolds.
Yeah, I mean, going to a gig, it beats like going to Walmart, huh?
Yeah, I like going to Walmart.
Oh man,
that's where all the rock stars hang out. They go to Walmart.
Yeah, or Home Depot, right? That was just waiting for me to talk about that. So let's talk about a couple of things. What's this all about? The Billboard Magazine Grammy contenders. What's that all about?
Yes, well, a few months ago, my son and I were contacted by KABC Radio out in Los Angeles.
Okay.
And they wanted to do an interview about the band and our record and everything. And we were like, yeah, sure, So we went ahead and did that. And the two hosts, Belinda and Dee, wonderful, just wonderful people. They were so thrilled and excited to have us on. And we did the interview, and it went great. And we really figured that was it. That was the end of it.
Yeah.
So a few weeks later, maybe even a month or so later, they asked us if we wanted to come back on. And we were like, sure, I'd be happy to. And during that interview, they let us know that we were, our band DeCarlo was in contention for a 2021 Grammy nomination. And then they sent us the photograph of Billboard Magazine, and we were featured in that magazine along with a few other contenders. And we were floored. We really had no idea that was even happening. So that interview, after that interview, it was just, we were just thrilled, of course. And I couldn't be more proud of the album, but proud of our bandmates and the hard work that we put into to putting that album out.
Yeah, and that's a really good lead in to talk about this album. You sing for Boston, obviously, but you decided to do basically like a solo band project where you're the lead vocalist, but you've got your son in the group. You had I think you had some session people come in to help do the album itself, and you've got a great live show, which a lot of people should check out if they have the opportunity to see it. But the album came out, I think the full album came out back in January, if I remember. and you had a single out, at least one or two singles out prior to that. And I got to tell you, and I'm not, because you're on the show and so forth, I'm not trying to brown nose here, but it's still my favorite album of 2020. There have been some great things. The shirt I'm wearing is a band called Perfect Plan from Sweden. I like those guys a lot. They put out a great record, but I'm still loving on that DeCarlo record. How long did it take you to put those songs together? Were those like years in the works, or tell us a little bit about, the writing process there?
Yeah, well, first, thank you for that compliment, and it makes me feel good to know that you like the album. That's great feedback. A number of those songs were written years before there was even a record contract offered to us by Frontiers, before there was Boston,
Yeah.
before there was DeCarlo.
Wow.
And I have been writing for years, and it was just a hobby. I've often said in interviews, singing was a hobby of mine, and really that's all it was.
Yeah.
So some of those songs made it to the album, and what was really great about that was I funded those recordings out of my own pocket.
Yeah.
And it was nice to get a little payback once we got the record deal. And it was nice because I was able to, justify to my wife my spending the money to get those singles recorded and all that. So, but those songs, many of them, I would say probably a handful of them were written prior to all that. And then once we got the offer from Frontiers, my back was against the wall, because at that point, I usually would write just for fun. But once I signed that contract, I had a deadline to meet. And it was the first time I ever had to write kind of under pressure, because I felt like I really had to get something done. So for me personally, I am mostly, I'm at my best first thing in the morning. The later it gets in the day, the less I'm gonna, my focus is, especially on music. So oftentimes I would be in my music room at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. And it would be funny because my wife would say, "Do you want lunch?" And I'd be thinking it's like 10 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, "No, I don't want lunch." And she'll say, "Well, it's like 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, I couldn't believe I was in here that long. So I spent a lot of time writing for that album, and it was quite an experience. And again, you're right, I did have some session musicians on there, and of course my son is on there, and it was a great experience, and it really opened my eyes to how much work goes into that. Not just the writing of it, but the recording of it.
Right.
And then getting your liner notes all in order, and getting your artwork done for the CD or the album, whatever you want to call it. So there was just a ton of work in that. And I'm hopeful that we will get a second offer. Hopefully this album will warrant a second offer from Frontiers for another album, because I've already began working on some other songs. And I'm really excited about being able to come out with another album down the road, hopefully. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you that question, so you beat me to it, which is cool. So you've already gotten some material that you're thinking about maybe for a second album. Haven't heard yet back from the label about the were they happy with the first album? Do you know, or what was their reaction?
Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, we're not in communication every day, but every now and again we'll touch base with the label. They'll reach out to us about something, a promotional or something like that. But they were excited about it. And as a matter of fact, they chose the singles that they wanted to release prior to the actual release. And it's funny because the song that has the most plays, at least on Spotify, is the song "You Are the Fire." Yes. And ironically, that is the last song that I wrote. That's the last song I wrote. And It was, I had to come up with one more, and that was it. And I kind of wish that that was the release. I think Lightning Strikes Twice, the song itself, it got some good feedback, but you know, some of the naysayers out there thought it was a little predictable, and some thought that it was a little dated.
Mhm.
And that part of it didn't bother me, because if it sounded dated like back in the 80s, beautiful, because that's my favorite era of music right there.
Yeah.
So that didn't bother me. But you know, everybody has their own opinion. It's all good. You know, we got a lot of good feedback on that song, and you're always going to have a few that aren't really, you know, they'll like one and not the other, and it's okay. You know, music has been a part of my life for a lot of years, and I don't sit down and write a song for the fans. And I don't
Yeah.
mean that in a negative way, but I sit down and write what I feel in my heart, and I'm hopeful that when it's done, it might reach a few other people out there who might feel that same way.
Yeah. And that's what good songwriters do. They write songs that might be more for themselves, or about a situation, or about something that then, you know, you'll hear songwriters do this all the time, where they talk about, you know, I wrote this song, I wasn't thinking of who would like it necessarily, but it ends up having like broad appeal, or it relates, so you relate to that song, or it has, you know, maybe the song was intended to mean something, but it means something else for someone who hears it. I hear some of these songs on this album, and I think of the year 2020, some of the things that have been going on in this year, and the songs, you know, they have this dual application, which typically that's what good music will do. It will kind of cross over into other areas. And it's I heard one songwriter, I forget who it was, who said these songs are all my babies. I send them out into the world. I don't know what's going to happen to them after I send them out into the world. Some of them will grow up and be these big, strong things, and others will just kind of like, you know, meander out there, and maybe they'll eventually do something. But as a former radio guy, let me say this. I mean, if I had the ability to play a tune like There She Goes on the radio, a nice 3-minute song with a really strong pop groove, a really strong chorus, it just amazingly catchy song, and come out of a break with that song, and it ends in a way which, I mean, you talk about the 80s, 70s songs did that too. Obviously there's a heavy influence in there, where I think that a lot of the keyboard sounds you used, you were kind of reaching over a little bit to your fan base over in Boston, I'm sure,
Right.
trying to maybe bring them along and say, hey, I've got something over here too that you guys might like. Was that the intention? I know you probably think, you know, Styx, Boston, Journey, Foreigner. There's a tune in there that's, I think it's called Rock and Soul. It's very Foreigner-esque.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably where all your influences are coming from.
Yeah, some of those songs, I was definitely influenced by those bands, and I didn't write those songs with the hope of grabbing those fans as much as I did fans of those bands, but as much as I did because I like that sound.
Yeah.
That is what drew me to, you know, those particular performances and sounds in the way that we recorded that album. You know, it's funny because I have told my son from time to time, every now and again we'll be together watching or listening to the album as we're driving somewhere, and from time to time I'll look over at him and I'll say, you know what, if we did this back in the 80s,
yeah,
we might have had something.
Yeah.
And, but I cannot see myself sitting down to write something to make, you know, other people happy. I hope that what I write is something that they're receptive to and they like it, sure. But someone once told me, they heard one of my original songs and they said, well, that's good, but you got to stick with today's market. Why?
Yeah.
Why do I got to do that? I mean, you know, if it's my song, I can write the way I want to, and depending on how I go about it and what I want out of it. Now, if I'm looking, to write for, a movie or something like that, I could see you might want to go in a certain direction, but I'm going in the direction that's most natural to me. And those are the influences of Boston, Journey, Styx, Foreigner, those right there, and that's really what it was all about for me.
Yeah, and you and I think are almost the same age, and I think there are a lot of people that are in our age group who feel a bit like musical refugees when we turn on the radio right now. And I'm talking about like the new music stations or adult contemporary stations or mainstream rock radio I complain about all the time. It's very dark. All the singers they all have this sort of deep growl in their voice. There aren't guys like when you come on the air, or I would say if you were on the radio, when you come on the radio, there's like light coming out of your voice. You know what I mean? You hear a Steve Perry or a Kevin Cronin or a Jimmy Jameson, you hear like some light coming out of your speakers. There's not just this darkness. It's not to say that some of those bands didn't dabble with maybe a little bit of an edginess or more progressive, darker side. But for me, most of the time I want music to bring me up, and I'm a big fan of Motown. I get down on my luck. I'm feeling bad. I heard it through the grapevine, you know what I mean? So right. It never gets old for me. The soul, that kind of music with a groove in it never gets old for me.
Yeah, it was important for me to want to write something uplifting.
Yeah.
That I can say I did want to go in that direction. Given today's world, you could write some dark stuff. There's stuff you could talk about and write about, but it's not necessarily, it doesn't put out a positive vibe. It's like you say, sometimes it's a little dark and negative. And that's like the music of Boston. The songs that Tom Scholz has written along with Brad Delp's, amazing vocals. I don't do drugs, but when I hear that music,
I got you.
I get high off of that music.
Yeah.
And I don't even think I can put into words what that music, does for my soul. And I know it doesn't. I mean, I can only imagine how Tom must feel filling an arena or a amphitheater full of people who feel the same way.
Yeah.
And that's one of the wonderful things that I feel when I'm on stage with Boston is it's, again, with the negative things that are going on in this world. And over the years, same thing, there's been a lot of negative, not just COVID, but you can go back, there's always something, there's always something to get down about.
Right.
But when you're able to get an arena full of people, an amphitheater full of people, a theater full of people, when you can get them all together in one room and to experience the happiness that music brings, you're one. For that 90 minutes, you're one.
Yeah. It's kind of like a religious experience in some ways. And we all were fortunate enough to grow up in an era where you had AM radio in the early days, and then you had FM radio come along, and Boston was right there at the beginning of really that rock format. And that debut album, which, again, people who ask me about, so Dave, what's your favorite album of all time? I mean, I have a lot of favorites. I love Escape by Journey. But if you're going to press me on what I think is the best debut album in the history of rock music, and I know the Beatles are in there. I know there are I'm a Beatle fan. I'm a Rolling Stones fan, but that Boston debut album, you could set the needle down. Obviously, you had to flip it over in those days, but you could play it all the way through. And these were songs, every single song was on the radio, Tommy, every song. Yeah. And I know you cut your teeth probably playing that album backwards, sideways. Tell us about how that I mean, there are legendary stories. I've seen the videos of you with the Home Depot stuff and all of that.
Right.
Were you just walking around the store like singing these songs? I mean, what was going on?
It really started back when I was like 12 years old.
Wow.
A friend of mine, my best friend, he let me borrow his Boston debut album.
Yeah.
And, I fell in love with it, like you,
Yeah.
like millions of other people. And I was a listener back then, not so much a singer. And then I was at a high school party at somebody's house. One of those, their parents went away for the weekend, so they had a party in the basement thing.
Yeah.
And a Boston song came on. I don't know if they were playing the radio or somebody was, flipping albums on. I forgot. But a Boston song came on, and I started singing along to it. And I noticed in the basement of the, 20 or 30 kids who were down there, it got a little bit quiet. And then I remember a girl came up to me and she says, "Wow, that sounds awesome." And I says, "Thanks." And she says, "You know what? You sound like that guy from Boston." And when she said that, I can go right back to that moment, because that is the moment that I felt, that was such a compliment to be compared to him, that I began to listen and sing Boston songs along to the radio or the record or the cassette tape, whatever I had. That was all I did whenever I sang. I sang that stuff. So, people have said in the past, well, he's trying to sound like Brad. Okay. Well, you go back to your Little League days, anybody who played sports, and even later on in years, you've seen where people will say, I mean, there's a movie, I forgot the name of it, Clint Eastwood, about a baseball scout or whatever.
The Field of Dreams?
No, it was something else. It was I forgot what it was, but it's a Clint Eastwood movie, and he's a baseball scout.
Yeah.
And in the movie, there's like a kid who was selling popcorn in the stands, who one day they saw him throwing and they said, "Hey, come down here and throw a little bit."
Yeah.
And I remember in this particular scene, they had the batting or the hitting or the pitching coach move aside, and they let this kid come in and pitch. Yep. And he had such great form and everything. And one of the other scouts said, he looks like Sandy Koufax.
Yeah.
And I can remember going all the way back to Little League, how kids would try to emulate their favorite player.
Sure.
And it would be a compliment. It was like, "Man, look at this guy. He swings the bat like Mantle," or "Man, he looks like he's got some power from the left side of the plate. He's like a Reggie Jackson."
Yeah.
So I did that with singing.
Right.
What's the problem? It's the same thing. I mean, I listened to Brad as a young kid, and I started singing a lot like him, because that's where my voice went. Right. I just automatically went that way. And it got to a point where I think I started singing along with Brad at such a young age, in the music of Boston at such a young age, that I didn't know any other way to sing. So if someone said, "Well, what's your real voice sound like?" Well, that's pretty much it. I don't have another voice, And when a Boston song comes on, if someone pays me a compliment and says, "Wow, you sound a lot like Brad Delp," then, I'm sure that if Brad were here today, he would take that as a huge compliment.
Yeah. Yeah. And like Arnel Pineda, who's the current lead vocalist of Journey, he'll be the first person to tell you that he's not Steve Perry. He will tell you that. He will say, "Here's the great man over here," and if he ever wanted to come back to Journey, see, unfortunately, Brad, because he's no longer here with us, he's not able to come back to Boston. But Arnel says, "Hey, I would step aside. He's the best. I'm sure in your heart of hearts, you're not saying, hey, I'm better than Brad Delp. You're saying, I'm trying to kind of be a bit like Brad. And if that helps you remember this music the way Brad sang it, then I'll tell you what, that's therapy for a lot of people who enjoy that music. And I'm choking up because
Yeah,
it
I'm the
works for
same
me.
way. There isn't a show that has gone by that I have sang with Boston that I'm not still trying um, to reach Brad's high notes. And I will continue. He may have left us, when he was 55 years old, but I think I will always continue to chase Brad's voice and try to be the best I could be,
Mhm.
and he set that bar.
Yeah.
And I bet you again, he would be the first one to. Yes, absolutely. What Arnell said about Steve Perry.
Mhm.
If I ever, if that were ever to happen to me, I'm sure if I would step aside and say, I would much rather watch Brad and listen to Brad sing than
Mhm.
have me up there. And I really think if Brad had the opportunity to hear me sing, he'd probably say, hey, you can come on up here with me. And he'd be proud of that.
That's a great way to look at it. So tell me about this audio book that you're working on. This sounds really interesting because, again, I saw all these news stories, I don't know how many years ago, and I was this fan. I was still working at this company at this call center, and I'm like, they found this guy at the Home Depot who's gonna be the singer of Boston. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking to myself, talk about a rags to riches story. I mean, somebody should make a movie out of this. And apparently, maybe an audiobook is in the works.
Yes. A few months back, I've been thinking about this for a long time.
Yeah.
And I was thinking I'd like to write a book about my experience. And I'm not the book guy. I can't sit at the computer. It's, give me a microphone and I'll tell the story. So I started doing some research, and honestly, until earlier this year, 2020, I had no idea what Audible was. I didn't know that people released audiobooks.
Yeah.
I was like, I could do that, I could definitely do an audiobook. So I started thinking about that, and I listened to some. Matter of fact, one of the latest ones that I listened to is James Taylor,
Yeah.
and he narrated his own audiobook. And there are other celebrities who've done them where they've had a professional person come in and do the narrating. But excuse me, I decided that I wanted to make a run at that. So a few months ago, I started, and I am going to be telling my story from a young child growing up in Utica, New York, right up until I took the stage for the first time with the band Boston at the Brad Delp tribute show. And there are a lot of other stories in there that I think people would find very interesting and probably surprising, that I was able to make it from there to there.
Yeah.
And I don't want to spoil any story, so I don't want to elaborate too much, but I think people will find some very interesting stories within that story. And I've really enjoyed it. I mean, I've come in to my music room, I put my headphones on, and I will just start chipping away at pieces of my life that will take me to that point in my life where I was, given that opportunity by Tom Scholz. And it's been emotional at times. It's been exciting. It's fun, but sometimes when you go back and you have to relive some moments that were a little challenging in your life, it's not easy to talk about. So it has taken me some time, but it's funny because right now in the story, I think I'm at I'm in like 10th grade in high school.
Yeah.
And I'm just getting into the meat of the story where I began to sing and follow that musical dream of wanting to be a musician.
Right.
It's fun. It's definitely been an exciting last few months every time I get in here and do that. And I got to be honest with you, there are days where I have walked out of this music room choked up and in tears, and my wife will say, "What's the matter?" And I said, "Well, remember this particular time in my life? Yeah, well, I just got done talking about it." So it was a little tough, and you could probably hear it in my voice. It's not easy to revisit some of that stuff, but again, it is kind of therapeutical, and it's been a lot of fun. And I really, my goal is to touch those and give some confidence to those people who also may have been down some of those similar roads and not give up on, whatever dream they have, be it musically or otherwise. So.
Wow. Yeah. That's pretty heavy stuff. It's hard. I can relate to what you're saying to some degree, because I was, wanting to be a big time DJ. I don't have the greatest, pipes in the industry. And back in the day, I was kind of discouraged because I was watching a lot of these other people do really well, and the music industry changed, and automation came in heavy, and I lost a lot of confidence. And then here I am on YouTube years later. So I feel, I don't know about vindicated, but I feel good about where I'm at now. And I just keep doing. My wife's always like, I can't believe, you got more subscribers and people are watching you. And my kids, it's hilarious. They're like, "Dad, you're like a B celebrity now."
Yeah. It feels good though,
I don't know what that means, but and I just take it in stride, because I love to do, like you were talking about how much you love to do it. Your passion, like writing these songs, they weren't like, "Oh, I've got to write a song for the executives over at, blah, blah, blah record label, and make sure this is radio ready." There is no radio ready now anyway for music like this. So it's like you just write for yourself. And maybe you can get one of these songs. You're going to get Tommy Jr. on this. Maybe you can get one of these songs over on TikTok, and do a little walking video with headphones, like they did with Dreams by Fleetwood Mac, and it's got like 10 million views. Maybe you could,
sure.
I don't know anymore. I don't know how to work that angle of things. All I do is just,
we're constantly, throwing around ideas. This music endeavor for us with DeCarlo has been, it's just nonstop. It's if we're not performing, which is mainly on weekends, then we are prepping for that following weekend, and be it rehearsing or band business, or just different marketing schemes that we're trying to come up with, and things of that nature. So it's definitely kept us busy, and it's really been a lot of fun. This is it's funny because I have a picture up here on my wall of my son and I performing at a show, and I wrote it. I'm going to give it to him someday, but it says to my son Tommy, it says, "Tommy, these were the best days of my life."
That's dude, you're get me choked up now. Stop it. So it's I'd be a little amiss here if I didn't ask about anything going on with the mothership, meaning Boston itself. They've been a bit quiet, as they tend to be at times. We know we have a bit of a lockdown still in place, and that might be an issue even next year. I'm not sure. This is just such a weird thing, and there's so much conflicting information, and it's just distressing as a human being to be able to plan your life accordingly. Anything going on with Boston these days?
Well, I I know that the best person to answer that would be the pilot of the mothership, if you will. And but again, did you make a good point with with what's happening here? It's very unpredictable.
Yeah.
And how can you plan something? I mean, we ourselves, our band DeCarlo, have planned several things that didn't take place. We got contacted by the venue, something happened, there was a setback of some sort, related to COVID.
Right.
So, but I know that, all of the band members in Boston, I know that we're always eager and ready to go whenever Tom is.
Yeah.
Whenever that may be. And it's, I know, and again, I can really probably speak for all of the band members. It's the proudest moment to be on stage with Tom. And, I can't tell you how many times that, we'll be on stage and it'll be a sold out arena. And I'll look over at Tom and I'll think to myself, I wonder how he feels knowing that because he went in the basement back in the 70s, here we are in 2017, still, packing stadiums and arenas. And I just, that's overwhelming to me. I couldn't imagine how he must feel. So, I'm so thankful that he did that back in the 70s. And I'm sure that every Boston fan feels the same way because he has, through his music has brought so much, happiness to so many people. And, that is a true blessing in and of itself.
Amen to that. Wow. Yeah. I mean, again, that debut album, I could talk about it. We could do a whole segment on it. It's a start to finish, no filler, innovative. The guitar sounds on it just broke all kinds of crazy new ground. You think of a guy we just lost like Eddie Van Halen, who kind of changed the face of guitar. Tom Scholz, in a way, kind of changed the way production is done on an album. The big sound, kind of it's kind of, you could speak to this probably. It's kind of tough to duplicate that sound in a live venue like that. Although I think you guys do a terrific job. Technology over the years has probably helped you catch up with what Tom did in the mid 1970s, which is just mind-boggling to think about how far ahead he was on this stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, that album, those good time lyrics, the way Brad, delivered. I lived on Cape Cod, so when I heard "Dancing in the Streets of Hyannis," I meant it. You know what I mean? We meant it. We were dancing. I mean, and that band, I mean, I was probably a little kid, so I didn't remember that actually happening, like Boston playing down somewhere in Hyannis. But it's just like talking about, and this is the way you do with your lyrics, by the way. You're just talking about situations, and it's relatable to people. And I think that's what makes your songwriting a nice tribute to what Boston started to do at the very beginning.
Yeah. I can't speak much, if any at all, on the technicalities of how the Boston sound is duplicated for live performances. That is the mind of Tom Scholz and Gary Peel.
Yeah.
Those two handle all that. And the great thing is for me, the great thing for me as just a singer in the band, and I play a little keys from time to time, is when I put my in-ears in and we start the set, be it at rehearsals or at a show, there it is. That's the record. It's in here, and I'm listening to it, and I'm about to sing to it, and I have to remind myself that the people that are playing it and Tom, the guy who wrote it, he's right next to me. They're right here in the room. So, it really is an amazing feat that those guys do to be able to pull that stuff off. And I don't ask because it's so technical. I don't want to know. All I want to do is sing. If you can play it, I'll sing it. And that's about as simple as I can say it.
Yeah, those guys bake the cake and all you have to do is eat it.
That's right. And they work hard, man. We have a crew, our Boston crew, they work hard. And there's so much more behind the scenes, Dave, than I ever knew. I mean, it's like, every stop on the tour is like picking up an office building and you take it with you. And, what's funny is, from the stage looking out, there's thousands of people. And then, there's us on stage, but behind the stage, not only our crew, but, you go back into whatever venue and there's people set up and it's like an office. And the show, although they love the music, they got to do their jobs backstage. They don't get to always come out and see the show.
Yeah.
And they really keep things moving. They keep the band moving, and it's, I never knew so much went into that. And I've benefited from that knowledge now because we implement as much as we can into our DeCarlo show.
Right.
And the nice thing about it is our bandmates, they get to reap those benefits of me at least having that experience, and it brings a level of professionalism to our show. And I know they really appreciate that. Our band members really appreciate the fact that, we go out of our way to, in our contracts, things will be covered, like our food and our hotel rooms and everything. And young kids like that, they never experienced that before, nor did I until I was in the band Boston. So,
yeah,
again, though, to go back to Tom and Gary Peel, those two, they make it happen. I don't know how, but they make it happen. And it's just amazing.
Well, that's awesome. Well, let's do a little plugging here. You guys still have a website where you can purchase the DeCarlo Lightning Strikes Twice album, correct?
Yes, I believe that is. It's funny. It's my band, and my son does so much of it. I don't know everything about what goes on
Yeah.
behind the scenes, but yeah, DeCarloRocks.com or our DeCarlo Facebook page.
Okay.
There's links there. And it's funny, we actually, my son just placed an order and we just got the order in. We got some new merch coming in, and it's arrived, and we're excited to, get that out to our fans, and very soon at the next show. So yeah, you can definitely find us at DeCarloRocks.com or our DeCarlo Facebook page.
Excellent. And you said you have a gig or two coming up, or I know most of it happens locally where you are currently living, and you're not doing any big like touring going far away, or
no, we do have a local. Well, we were out in Myrtle Beach this past weekend.
Okay.
And, we had 2 shows out there, and those were both sold out.
Wow.
Wonderful reception from our fans out there. I just couldn't believe how many people showed up to our show. And,
I can.
When I go back, thank you. When I go back to our first, if you don't know this, Dave, but the first really DeCarlo shows,
yeah,
was me standing at a microphone and my son running some karaoke tracks on a laptop, and we were performing at one of those car shows where they come in with the nice cars and they lift up the hoods, the old school classic cars.
Oh yeah, okay.
And 90% of the people, if not more, were looking at cars, and I got pictures of me standing like in an empty parking lot, like where we're singing. And every now and again, someone would come up to me and they would say, someone who knew what I did, or, been out with Boston, and they would come up and they kind of gently say to me, does anybody know that you stood for Boston? And I'm like, apparently not. But that's, to go from there to there is great. So
yeah.
so this weekend we have a private party.
Okay.
that we're doing, and we do quite a few of those.
Yeah.
And then the following weekend, we're out. We go down to Georgia, and we
Okay.
Mad Life Soundstage and Studios, and we played there before. Great venue. We've had we played there a couple of times and always have a great turnout. So
Yeah.
we're definitely keeping busy. We're keeping as busy as COVID will allow us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess you've got to go where they'll let you play at this point. And I'm
Yeah.
hoping maybe some of those restrictions will be loosened up so some of these musicians can get back out there. You rely so much these days on, the live touring revenue. I wish, a million people would go out and purchase the DeCarlo Lightning Strikes Twice CD. That would be nice. But, people stream, they download, they do what they do. And it's the world we live in. So I guess we have to do a workaround, as I said before.
And before I forget, excuse me, the Mad Life show.
Yeah.
What's really special about that particular show is a friend of mine reached out to me from high school, and about 25 or 30 of my high school classmates are making the trip down to Georgia for that show. And that just means the world to me. When you go so many years without seeing, your classmates, and then for them to go out of their way and take the time out of their schedules to come and see me perform is amazing. So, to all of my John F. Kennedy high school classmates and from Utica, New York,
Nice.
I couldn't be more thankful. So.
Yeah, that's cool, man. That is cool, and that's a bit of a road trip to go from Western New York down to Georgia to see. But I think they understand. You're a big star now, big celebrity, and they're thinking we got to support our brother, and we got to show a little solidarity here and help his family, eat, because I think that's what it's all about at this point.
Yeah.
Tommy DeCarlo, thank you so much for being on today. You are a gentleman and a scholar, and I wish you the best this year. And let's just pray that 2021 is just a little bit better than 2020. It would be a huge hit.
Yeah, I'm ready to kick 2020 to the curb, and I think a lot of people are.
All right, brother. Thanks for being on the show. You're the best.
Okay, thank you.
All right.